Now, here's a fact that you didn't see on your 6 p.m. news, but it is reality. Each way Albo will drive up inflation. If inflation increases, so do interest rates. The faster the inflation, the higher the interest rates. So the question I ask you all again here tonight in Queensland, would you bet your house on Albo? No! Because that is one of the central questions of the country. You can't trust them on the borders, you can't trust them with the economy, and you can't trust them with your own financial circumstances to pay off your own home. Now let me show you here about the things that drive inflation. Put simply, higher wages increase business costs. If you increase business costs, it passes on to the customer. If a higher power bill goes up, guess what? It gets passed on to the business, passed on to you, the customer. So while they might say maybe, fingers crossed, 2025, what happens between now and then? Up, up, up. And of course, government spending will increase inflation. So according to Each Way Albo, we are where we are right now in part because of those very factors. But he's not going to do anything about them. In fact, he's going to make it worse. By his own calculations, $300 billion more than the current amount of money that is being spent in the federal budget is what is coming if Labor and the Greens and the Teals get in power. What does that do? It increases the costs, which increases inflation, which increases your interest rates. Would you bet your house on Albo? No. And Albo, like everything else, is lying about the reality of what his government would do. They will, because they are spending every dollar that's currently being spent, plus dozens of billions of dollars more every year, means what? They're not going to get anywhere near a surplus, which means deficits keep going up. Now, of course, one of the things that Labor Party people think was the reason they lost last time was because they were too honest about their plans. So now they are being deeply dishonest. For example, what about this today from Albo when it comes to how do you pay back more money in spending than the current government does? Have a look at this garbage.
This is an investment that produces a return. You only have off-budget commitments if it produces a return to the government.
So it doesn't really matter, it'll eventually come back to you. The cost of not doing it is not enough. Which reminds me of who saying what last time about exactly the same climate policy that Albo is pushing now?
Can you give us a single figure on what it's going to cost, sir?
There is no one mythical figure.
No, they couldn't give it. Instead, the cost of doing nothing was more expensive. This is exactly, I've told you this before, it shortens climate policy with new lipstick on the pig. It is a new way of selling the same bad idea that you pay for. 2030 comes before 2050. And remember, China can do whatever it wants when it comes to pollution till 2030. This election matters. They are not the same. We are at a fork in a road and it matters, but guess what? Everyone in this room, everyone watching at home, you can stop them. So today, thank you. So as you know, I gave it to Albo last night because while talking all the time about wages, he didn't have a plan for anyone to get a pay rise. Roll the tape.
The falling real wages. We have a plan to lift wages. That's why one of the things that we need to do is to address wages. Wages will grow faster where a government has consciously held down wages. Australians know that the cost of everything is going up, but their wages aren't. A reduction in real wages, falling wages, better wages to gain wages. Our plan for lifting wages.
He said he couldn't make any promises when it comes to wages, but then guess what? The tail started to wag and the tail runs the dog. In this case, the union movement came around and said that we should have wage rises of 5.5%. So guess who today finally came out and said that 5.1% is what he wants to put on top of the cost of employing every single person in the country.
Does that mean you would support a wage hike of at least 5.1% just to keep up with inflation?
Absolutely.
So you heard yes, right? Well, apparently KK says he really means maybe. Roll this one.
Not in economic advice along these lines to say it's reasonable to lift wages or the minimum wage by 5.1%?
Kieran, first of all, that is a misstatement of what was said today. What Anthony made clear is that people's wages should keep pace so that they can pay for the rising costs of living.
No, control room back at Sky News. Can we play the grab again of Albo that we just played before KK? Because it is not misleading or misquoting to actually quote the leader making the promise. Play it again.
Does that mean you would support a wage hike of at least 5.1% just to keep up with inflation?
Absolutely.
Oh, no, he didn't really mean it. Seriously. I don't care what the polls say. I think normal people can see what's going on here. They can see that this bloke is pretending that he has a solution to a problem, but his solution will make it worse. It's not that people on the poorest wages don't deserve an increase. Of course they do. But the idea that they deserve what the unions demand, a day after saying he wouldn't agree to that position, and then being told that he didn't really have that position when clearly you heard that's what he said, is frightening about how they will make decisions. This bloke can't stand up to the mean girls. How does he stand up to China? He knows that inflation equals interest rates. He will add cost to business, which pushes up inflation, which pushes up interest rates, which is why you can't bet your house, your family home, on each way Albo. And as for more inconsistencies inside the Labor Party, well, guess what the Assistant Treasurer is saying? Such a thing would, of course, be magic pudding, economics. Even economists are out there suggesting that this thing is going to push up inflation. Far right-wing commentators from the far right-wing Australian Financial Review saying that wages push threatens higher inflation. For his part, the Prime Minister had a free kick from right in front and got 6.
As we heard him doing today, making things up on the run about what he thinks wages should be, without talking to people, without actually thinking through the consequences of the things that he's talking about, just running off at the mouth on important issues like our national economy and national security. These types of things need careful, experienced, disciplined people who know how to manage an economy and a security environment which is under incredible threat.